March of 2021, Tyler did something that shattered whatever fragile peace we'd built. He showed up at the house unannounced. It was a Sunday afternoon. Kevin and I were in the backyard, watching Ethan practice soccer in the fading spring light. When the front door opened and closed, I saw Kevin's posture change. He stood up from his chair, and I watched his face go through a series of expressions: surprise, fear, resignation, before settling into something that looks like defeat. Tyler's voice was calm. Too calm. "We need to talk." Kevin nodded. Inside. They went into the study. Again. That room, that door, those conversations we weren't allowed to hear. I wanted to follow them. I wanted to demand answers. Instead, I stayed in the backyard with Ethan, who was oblivious, practicing penalty kicks while the sun went down. 20 minutes later, Tyler walked out of the house. He didn't look at me. He didn't say goodbye. He got in his car and drove away. I watched the taillights disappear down the street, and then I went inside. Kevin was sitting at the kitchen table. His face was gray. He looked like a man who'd just been told something he'd always known but had been refusing to accept. "Kevin," I said. "What happened?" He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I'd never seen Kevin cry before. Not once. Not even at our wedding. Not even when he lost his job. "Tyler is my son," he said. "He's always been my son." Yes. But he was also, before I married Rebecca, he was also Maria's son. I didn't understand at first. Then I did. "Maria," I said. "Your college girlfriend." "Yes." "And Tyler." Tyler was hers. She got pregnant. We were 22. She wanted to keep the baby. I wasn't ready. I wasn't brave enough. His voice broke. "I wasn't there, Karen. I wasn't there for any of it. She raised him alone. She married someone else when Tyler was 4. And I've spent the last 25 years paying for it in every way I know how." I sank into the chair across from him. The kitchen was very quiet. I could hear the clock ticking, the furnace humming, the distant sound of Ethan's video game from the living room. "He's known?" I asked. "All along?" "He found out when he was 16. Rebecca told him. I think she wanted to hurt me." He laughed, a terrible sound. "She succeeded. What does he want from you?" "The truth. An apology. Something. I don't know." Kevin put his head in his hands. "I've been trying to make it up to him for years. I've been giving him money. I've been trying to be present. But I can never undo what I did. I can never get those years back. And he knows that. He hates me for it. And I don't blame him." I reached across the table and put my hand on his arm. "Kevin, this is why you couldn't tell me. I didn't know how. I didn't know if you'd still love me if you knew what kind of man I was. I didn't know how to answer that. I didn't know what kind of man he was. A man who'd abandoned his first child. A man who'd spent decades trying to atone. A man who'd made promises he couldn't keep and mistakes he couldn't undo. Was I married to that man? Was that man the same person I'd been sleeping beside for 4 years? I didn't know. I still don't. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Tyler stopped calling after that. He didn't come for holidays or birthdays. Kevin would send him texts that went unanswered. It was as if his son had finally decided to cut him off completely, and Kevin was left holding the wreckage of a relationship he'd never been able to repair. Kevin changed after that. He became quieter, more withdrawn. He went to work and came home and sat in front of the television, not really watching. He stopped trying to connect with Sophia, stopped trying to manage the chaos of our blended family. He was there, but he wasn't present. He was a man walking through his own life like a ghost. I tried to reach him. I really did. I suggested couples therapy, and he refused. I suggested he reach out to Tyler directly, and he said he didn't know how. I suggested he talk to his brother, and he said Richard had made his feelings clear years ago. "I'm a failure," Kevin said one night. We were in bed, the lights off, the room dark. I failed as a father. I failed as a husband. I failed in every way that matters. "You haven't failed as a husband," I said. "You've been struggling. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Because struggling means you're trying. Failure means you're given up." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I don't know how to keep trying anymore, Karen. I'm so tired." I turned over and put my arms around him. He felt thin to me, thinner than he'd been when we married, like the weight of his secrets had literally been eating him away. "Then let me try for both of us," I said. "For a while. Until you're ready." He didn't answer. He just let me hold him. And I lay there in the dark, holding a man who was falling apart, and I asked myself again, is this what I want? Is this the life I chose? And this time, I had a different answer. I wanted this life. Not because it was perfect. Not because Kevin was perfect. But because it was real. Because we were two imperfect people trying to build something in the ruins of what we'd each hoped for. Because sometimes love isn't a fairy tale. Sometimes love is just showing up, day after day, even when you're tired, even when you're scared, even when you don't know if it will be enough. I didn't know if it would be enough. I'm still not sure. But I was willing to find out. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Sophia graduated in 2023. She was 25 years old, a biology major with a minor in philosophy, and she wanted to go to graduate school to study marine conservation. She was also engaged to a boy named Daniel she'd met in a research lab, a quiet, serious young man who looked at her the way David had once looked at me. I cried at the graduation. Kevin cried too, which surprised me, because Kevin didn't usually cry. Afterward, at the reception, he pulled Sophia aside and talked to her for a long time. I didn't know what they said. But when they were done, Sophia hugged him, really hugged him, the way she hadn't since she was a child, and I saw something shift between them. Not a resolution, exactly. But maybe the beginning of one. "Mom," Sophia said to me later, as we were driving home. "I want to tell you something." "What?" "I'm sorry. For how I treated you after you married Kevin. For how I treated him. I was so angry at you for being happy. I was so angry at Dad for dying. I was angry at the whole world, and I didn't know how to say it. So I just shut you out." I reached over and took her hand. "You were 17. You were grieving. You had every right to feel what you felt. But you had every right to be happy too. And I made that harder than it needed to be. Water under the bridge, honey." She shook her head. "No. I need to say this. I need you to know that I see you. I see what you've been doing, holding everything together, managing everyone, trying to make this family work when it should have fallen apart a long time ago. You're incredible, Mom. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you that sooner. I was crying again. I couldn't help it. I love you, sophomore. I love you so much. I love you too, Mom. And I love Kevin, too. Not the way I love Dad, but a different way. A real way. Kevin was in the driver's seat, listening, not saying anything. But I saw his eyes in the rearview mirror, and they were wet. That night, in our bedroom, Kevin said, "Thank you." For what? For being patient with her. For being patient with me. For not giving up when I gave you every reason to. I sat down next to him on the bed. "We're not done yet," I said. "We still have a lot of work to do." "I know. Do you still want to do it?" "The work?" He looked at me. Really looked at me, in a way he hadn't in years. "Yes," he said. "I do. I want to try. Really try, this time." I nodded. I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to believe him. Sometimes that's the same thing. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. We're still married. That's the simple part. It's 2024 now. Ethan is 14, a high school freshman who plays soccer and is already taller than me and wants to be an engineer like David was. Sophia is 26, living in Portland with Daniel, applying to grad schools, planning a wedding for next fall that she wants me to help organize. Lily is 23, graduated from community college, working as a veterinary technician, dating a boy named Marcus who seems to genuinely adore her. Kevin is 54. I'm 49. Tyler and Kevin are talking again. Not regularly, not easily, but they're talking. Tyler reached out last Thanksgiving, sent a text saying maybe we should try again. Kevin cried when he showed me the message. They had dinner together in January, just the two of them, and Kevin came home and didn't say much but slept better than he had in years. I didn't ask what they talked about. I didn't need to. Some conversations are private, even between a father and son who have spent decades learning to be strangers. Kevin's brother Richard still thinks I'm wrong for Kevin. He tolerates me at family events, says things that are just short of rude, leaves early. That's fine. I'm not married to Richard. I'm not sure anyone should be. I'm still in therapy. I go every other week now instead of every week, because I've learned how to ask myself the questions that matter. Kevin has started joining me on occasional sessions, when Dr. Patel suggests it and when Kevin feels ready. It's slow. It's awkward. But it's something. The house on Maple Creek Drive still doesn't feel like mine. 4 years in, and I still reach for things in drawers that aren't where I left them, still walk into rooms expecting to see Rebecca's furniture, still smell her perfume sometimes when the house is warm. But Kevin has finally removed her clothes from the closet. He's finally repainted the guest bedroom, the one room I'd asked him to change from the moment I moved in. Small victories. Small steps forward. We fight less now. Or maybe we fight differently, less about the small irritations, more about the real issues. Last month we had a fight about money, about the retirement account Kevin had drained to pay for Tyler's school, about the debt we'd accumulated during his unemployment. It was ugly. We said things we couldn't take back. But afterward, We sat on the couch together and actually talked about it. Really talked. And we figured out a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was a plan, and that was more than we'd ever managed before. Kevin still doesn't always see me. He still gets lost in his own head, his own problems, his own failures. But sometimes, not often, but sometimes, he looks at me and I see him looking. I see him really seeing me. And in those moments, I remember why I said yes when he proposed. Why I stayed when he gave me reasons to leave. Why I'm still here, still trying, still hoping. Because that's what love is at 49. Not the fairy tale I imagined when I was 20. Not the perfect partnership David and I had before it was taken away. Something messier. Something harder. Something that requires you to show up every day, even when you're tired, even when you're scared, even when you don't know if it will be enough. I don't know if it will be enough. I'm still finding out. But I'm still here. And still is Kevin. And our family, broken and complicated and held together with duct tape and stubbornness, is still here too. That's not a happy ending. It's not even a happy middle. But it's something true. And sometimes, after everything I've been through, something true is all I can ask for. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Sophia called me last Sunday. She was in her apartment in Portland, the windows open to the spring air, and I could hear the city sounds behind her voice, cars, voices, the distant wail of a siren. She was telling me about her thesis research, about the marine ecosystem she was studying, about Daniel and their wedding plans and the life she was building so far from the house where she'd grown up. "Mom," she said, interrupting herself. "Are you happy?" I thought about the question. I thought about Kevin, asleep on the couch downstairs, his breathing steady and calm. I thought about Ethan at a friend's house, growing into a young man who looked more like David every day. I thought about Lily, texting me photos of the dogs she was caring for at the veterinary clinic. I thought about Tyler, who had texted Kevin last week just to say hello. I thought about the house that still wasn't quite mine, and the marriage that still wasn't quite what I'd hoped, and a life I'd built from the wreckage of 2 broken families. Yes, I said. I think I am. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Good. You deserve to be happy, Mom. You really do." I wiped my eyes and smiled, even though she couldn't see me. "Thanks, honey. So do you." We said goodbye. I hung up the phone. The house was quiet. Kevin was still asleep. The dog was snoring softly on his bed by the kitchen door. Outside, the sun was setting over Millbrook Estates, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that David would have loved. I went to the window and watched the light fade. I thought about the man I'd loved and lost, and the man I'd married and almost lost, and the family we'd built from all the broken pieces of who we used to be. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't the life I'd wanted, not at first. Not when I was 43 and desperate and so tired of being alone. But it was my life. It was our life. And I was finally, after everything, ready to live it. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. The weeks after Sophia left for college were the loneliest of my lives. Not because Kevin wasn't there. He was always there, but because the house felt cavernous in a way it hadn't before. Sophia's room was at the end of the hall, and I'd catch myself walking past it and looking in, seeing her desk where she'd done homework, her bed where she'd read novels under the covers with a flashlight, her walls covered with photos of friends and concert ticket stub and a poster of some band I'd never heard of. The room was still there. She was just in another place now. Kevin suggested I start a new hobby. Maybe a book club, he said. Or you could take up running. Anything to get you out of the house. I didn't want to join a book club. I didn't want to take up running. I wanted my daughter back. I wanted my old life back. I wanted the life where David was alive and the kids were small and everything felt possible. But that life was gone. And I had to learn to live in the life I had, not the life I wanted. I started taking long walks in the evenings, after Kevin got home from work, after Ethan was settled with his homework. I'd walk through the neighborhoods around our house, past the houses where other families lived, other marriages struggled, other people tried to figure out how to be happy with what they had. One evening, I walked past a house where an older woman was sitting on her porch. She must have been in her 70s, maybe 80s, with white hair pulled back in a braid and reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up as I passed, and she waved. I waved back, feeling foolish. You look like you're thinking hard, she called out. Want to share? I stopped. I didn't know this woman. I'd never spoken to her before. But something about her voice, warm, curious, unassuming, made me want to answer honestly. Just thinking about my life, I said. That's the best kind of thinking, she said. The hard kind. The kind that matters. She patted the chair next to her. Sit with me for a minute. Tell me about it if you want. I don't know why I did it. I sat down on the porch, next to a stranger, and I told her about my husband who died, and my second marriage that wasn't what I'd hoped, and my daughter who'd left for college, and my son who was growing up too fast, and my life that felt like a series of compromises I hadn't intended to make. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she was quiet for a long moment. You know what I've learned in 82 years, she said finally. That love isn't what you think it is when you're young. When you're young, you think love is supposed to be easy, effortless, like in the movies. But that's not real love. Real love is work. Real love is showing up even when you're tired. Real love is staying when you have every reason to leave. She looked at me with those clear eyes. I'm not saying you should stay in a marriage that's hurting you. I'm saying that if you're staying because you're afraid of being alone, that's one thing. But if you're staying because you love him and you're willing to do the work, then maybe stop looking for the love you had before and start looking for the love you're building now. I didn't know what to say. I thanked her and went home. But her words stayed with me, echoing in the quiet spaces of my mind. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. The financial pressures of our marriage became a constant source of tension. Kevin's job loss during COVID had decimated our savings, and the severance pay had run out faster than we'd anticipated. We were carrying debt we'd never carried before, credit card balances, a loan from his retirement account, the mortgage on a house that felt like it was slowly drowning us. I started tracking every expense in a notebook I kept in the kitchen. Groceries, gas, Ethan's soccer equipment, Sophia's tuition, which I'd been paying even though she was technically an adult, because she was a college student and still needed help. Kevin's gas for his commute to his new job, which was further away and paid less. It was not a glamorous kind of poverty. We weren't going without food or utilities. We were going without savings, without security, without the cushion that David and I had built over years of careful planning. We were living paycheck to paycheck in a house we could barely afford, raising children who weren't ours together, trying to make a family out of two families worth of broken pieces. Kevin hated talking about money. He'd grown up poor, really poor, the kind of poor where you don't always know where your next meal is coming from, and he'd spent his entire adult life trying not to be poor again. The job loss had humiliated him in a way I could see in his posture, his voice, the way he avoided my eyes when the bills came in. "I'm handling it," he'd say when I tried to bring it up. "I know you're handling it," I'd say. "But maybe we should handle it together. I don't need your help." It wasn't about needing help. It was about being partners. But Kevin didn't see it that way. Kevin saw asking for help as weakness, as failure, as proof that he wasn't the man he wanted to be. I stopped pushing. I started managing the finances on my own, quietly, without telling him about the credit card balance that was creeping up, or the savings account that was almost empty, or the conversation I'd had with the bank about refinancing the mortgage. It was exhausting, but it was easier than fighting about it. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance. Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Ethan's teacher scheduled a parent-teacher conference in November, his first year with Kevin as a stepfather. I asked Kevin if he wanted to come, and he said yes, and I was surprised by how much his yes meant to me. We sat together in the small classroom across from Ethan's teacher, a woman in her 30s named Mrs. Patterson who had kind eyes and a patient manner. "Ethan was doing well in most subjects," she said, "but he seemed distracted lately. He daydreamed. He stared out windows. He sometimes seemed like he was somewhere else entirely." "It's normal for children going through transitions," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "Has there been a lot of change in his life recently?" I looked at Kevin. Kevin looked at me. "Yes," I said. "There has been." Kevin reached over and took my hand. It was the first time he'd done that in months, reached for me in public, claimed me as his partner in front of someone else. Mrs. Patterson noticed, and something in her expression softened. "Children are resilient," she said. "But they also need to feel heard. Have you talked to Ethan about how he's feeling? About the changes?" "We will," Kevin said. And I believed him. Or I wanted to believe him. That night, after Ethan went to bed, Kevin and I sat in the living room and had the hardest conversation we'd had in months. "I don't know what I'm doing," Kevin admitted. "With Ethan. I never had kids. I don't know how to be a father." "You're doing fine," I said. "I'm not. I'm just present. That's not enough." "It's more than enough." He looked at me. "How do you know?" Because David was present too," I said. "And look what he meant to them. Look what he meant to Ethan." Kevin was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I wish I'd known him." "David." "He would have liked you," I said. And I meant it. Kevin smiled, and for a moment I saw the man I'd married, the one who was trying so hard, who cared so much, who wanted so badly to get it right. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on me." I didn't say anything. I just leaned over and put my head on his shoulder, and we sat there together in the quiet, and for a moment, it felt like maybe we would be okay. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Rebecca called me one evening in February. It was unusual. Rebecca and I didn't call each other. We texted about Lily's schedule, about pickup times and school events, but we didn't have conversations. We weren't that kind of co-parents. "Karen," she said when I answered. I need to tell you something. It was about Kevin, I knew immediately. Something about Kevin that I didn't know. Tyler came to see me, she said. Yesterday. He told me what happened with Kevin. What Kevin told you. I waited. I wanted you to know something, Rebecca said. Kevin is a complicated man. He makes mistakes. He's hurt people, me included. But he's not a bad person. He's just broken in some ways. Ways that he doesn't know how to fix. Why are you telling me this? Because Lily loves you. And Ethan is a good kid. And Sophia is becoming a good adult. And you have a chance to build something real here. I don't want you to throw it away because of things that happened before you came along. I didn't know what to say. Talk to him, Rebecca said. Really talk. Not the way you've been dancing around things, protecting each other from the truth. Really talk. About everything. She hung up before I could respond. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time, thinking about Kevin, about his secrets, about the walls we'd built between us. Rebecca was right. We'd been protecting each other from the truth, and in doing so, we'd been slowly starving our marriage. That night, after dinner, I asked Kevin to sit with me on the couch. I want to know everything, I said. About Maria. About Tyler. About your marriage to Rebecca. About all of it. I don't want any more secrets. Kevin stared at me. Why now? Because I'm tired of being married to a stranger. Because I want to know who you really are. Because if we're going to make this work, I need to know what I'm working with. He was quiet for a long time. Then he started talking. He told me about Maria, his college girlfriend, the woman in the photograph. They'd been young and in love and stupid. She'd gotten pregnant their junior year, and Kevin had panicked. He'd told her to get an abortion. She'd refused. He'd told her he wasn't ready to be a father. She'd said she was ready to do it alone. And Kevin had let her. He'd let her drop out of school and move back to her hometown and raise their son without him. He'd told himself it was her choice. He'd told himself she didn't need him. He'd told himself a lot of things that let him sleep at night. Then Tyler turned 16, and Rebecca, who knew about Maria, had always known, told Tyler the truth. And Tyler's world shattered. And Kevin's too. I tried to make up for it, Kevin said. I've been trying for 25 years. But you can't make up for abandoning your child. You just have to live with what you did. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want you to see me the way I see myself. I reached for his hand. I see someone who's trying. Who's failed and keeps trying anyway. Who's not the man he wishes he was, but is trying to become someone better. Kevin looked at me. I saw tears in his eyes. I don't deserve you, he said. Maybe not, I said. But you're stuck with me now. He laughed, a broken sound, and pulled me into his arms. We stayed like that for a long time, holding each other on the couch while the television played to an empty room. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance. Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Lily graduated from community college in May with an associate degree in veterinary technology. The ceremony was small, just family, a handful of friends, Rebecca and her husband Greg sitting in the third row with the other parents. Kevin and I sat in the second row, with Ethan between us, cheering as Lily walked across the stage. She'd changed so much in the 2 years she'd lived with us. She'd grown into herself in a way that made me proud to have been part of her life, even in a small way. She was confident now, sure of herself, ready to take on the world. After the ceremony, Rebecca hugged Lily and cried. Greg shook Kevin's hand and said congratulations. And then Rebecca turned to me. Thank you, she said, for taking care of her, for making a home for her. She's a good kid, I said. She made it easy. Rebecca smiled. She had good examples. I didn't know what she meant by that, but I appreciated it. Lily moved into our own apartment that summer, a small place near the veterinary clinic where she'd gotten a job. She texted Kevin every day, just like she always had, but now the texts included photos of her new furniture, her new coworkers, her new life. Kevin read each one with tears in his eyes. I pretended not to notice. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Sophia's wedding was in September of 2024. She was 26 and Daniel was 28, and they were both so young and so sure of themselves in the way that only people who haven't been hurt yet can be. Kevin and I flew to Portland for the wedding. The ceremony was outdoors, in a park near Sophia's apartment, with string lights and wildflowers and a small crowd of family and friends. Sophia's mother's side of the family was there, my sisters, my brother, my elderly mother who hadn't left the house in months but insisted on coming to see her granddaughter get married. David's parents couldn't be there. David Sr. had passed away 3 years after his son, and David's mother was in an assisted living facility in Oakland, too frail to travel. But she had sent a letter for Sophia to read at the ceremony, and Sophia had cried while reading it, and everyone else had cried too. Daniel's vows were traditional and sweet. Sophia's were not. I'm not going to promise to love you forever, she said, looking at Daniel with those clear eyes I'd given her. Because I don't know what forever looks like. What I know is today. And today, I choose you. And I'll choose you again tomorrow, and the day after that, for as long as you'll have me. It wasn't what I'd expected. But it was perfect for Sophia. It was honest in a way that most wedding vows never are. Kevin stood next to me during the ceremony, holding my hand, and when Sophia kissed Daniel and everyone cheered, I saw Kevin wipe his eyes. She looks so happy, he said. She does. You did that. You raised her. I had help, I said. I squeezed his hand. We had help. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw everything. The years we'd struggled, the fights we'd had, the secrets we'd kept, the love we'd built from scratch. Thank you, he said. For what? For staying. For fighting. For not giving up when I made it so hard. I didn't say anything. I just leaned into him and watched my daughter dance with her new husband, and I thought about how complicated life was, how nothing ever went the way you planned, how the mess was sometimes the point. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. I'm 49 years old. I've been married twice. I've buried one husband and almost lost another. I've raised children who aren't mine and stepchildren who aren't mine and watched them all grow into people I'm proud of. I've lived in a house that never felt like mine and married a man who never felt like mine and tried to build a life that felt authentic even when it wasn't the life I'd imagined. This is not the story I would have written for myself. It's messier. Harder. More complicated in ways I never anticipated. But it's mine. Kevin is in the other room, watching a basketball game with Ethan, and I can hear them laughing at something, a call on the television, a bad play, something that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things but matters in this moment, in this room, in this family we're slowly, painfully, hopefully building. Sophia is in Portland, married now, starting a life that will take her further away from me. I'll miss her, but I'll also be okay. Because she's happy, and that's all any parent wants. Lily is living her own life, texting her father photos of dogs she cares for, building a future that has nothing to do with the broken marriage her parents once had. And Tyler is talking to Kevin again, slowly, carefully, like two people learning to trust each other after years of estrangement. It's not perfect. None of it is perfect. But it's real. And real is enough. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Sometimes I think about the woman I was when David died. 37 years old, with 2 small children and a mortgage and a career that had plateaued and no idea how I was going to survive the next day, let alone the next 20 years. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just did. Day by day, meal by meal, bill by bill, tear by tear, I survived. I rebuilt myself into someone I didn't recognize, someone harder, someone more practical, someone who didn't have time for fairy tales or false hope or the luxury of believing that things would just work out. And then Kevin came along. And for a moment, I let myself believe again. I let myself think that maybe love could be easy, that maybe marriage could be simple, that maybe I could have the life I'd always wanted without having to fight for it. I was wrong. But I'm glad I was wrong. Because the life I have now, the one I'm living, is messier and harder and more complicated than anything I could have imagined. And it's also more real. More true. More mine. Kevin doesn't look at me the way David did. That's not a criticism, it's just a fact. David looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. Kevin looks at me like I'm a partner, an equal, someone he's choosing every day instead of someone he's already chosen. It's different. Not worse. Different. When I told Kevin I wanted to write this down, to document our story, not for publication but for ourselves, for our children, for whatever future we're building, he was quiet for a long time. Why? He asked. Because I want to remember, I said. All of it. The good and the bad and the ugly. I want to be able to look back and see what we survived. We haven't survived, he said. We're still in it. Exactly, I said. That's why it matters. He didn't understand. I'm not sure I do either. But I'm writing anyway. Because some stories need to be told, even if no one else ever reads them. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. The house on Maple Creek Drive still has Rebecca's fingerprints everywhere. Not literally, Kevin has repainted, rearranged, replaced most of what was here when we moved in. But there are traces. The way the hallway closet is organized, with the shoes on the left and the bags on the right. The placement of the hooks by the back door, at exactly the height Rebecca must have been. The faint watermark on the ceiling in the guest bathroom that Kevin keeps meaning to fix and never does. I used to resent these traces. I used to feel like I was living in a museum dedicated to someone else's life. But now, I'm not sure. Now I think maybe that's what houses are, layers of lives, stacked on top of each other, each one leaving marks that never quite fade. When Ethan grows up and moves away, will there be traces of him here? Will Kevin rearrange the house to erase them, or will they linger, stubborn ghosts that refuse to be forgotten? I don't know. I hope there's time to find out. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Kevin put the photograph of Maria away after I found it. I don't know where, I never asked, and he never offered. But I think about her sometimes. The woman who Kevin loved before Rebecca, before anyone else. The woman who raised his son alone and never asked him for anything, not even child support, not even a phone call, not even an acknowledgement that she existed. Tyler told Kevin, the last time they talked, that Maria had remarried. That she'd been happy. That she died 3 years ago, quietly, in her sleep, while her second husband was in the next room. Kevin cried when Tyler told him. I've never seen him cry like that, not even when Tyler first confronted him, not even at our wedding, not even when he lost his job. He cried like a man who had lost something he'd never allowed himself to mourn. I held him while he cried, and I thought about Maria, this woman I'd never met, who'd been part of Kevin's life before I existed in it. I thought about her courage, raising a child alone in a world that wasn't kind to single mothers. I thought about her grace, never bad-mouthing Kevin to Tyler, never trying to turn his son against him. I thought about her strength, building a life, finding happiness, dying peacefully in her own home. I don't know if I could have done what she did. I don't know if I would have had her courage, her grace, her strength. But I hope I would. Thank you, I whispered to Maria, to a woman who'd been dead for 3 years. For Tyler. For Kevin. For all of it. Kevin didn't hear me. But I think, somehow, she did. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance? Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. Ethan asked me last week if I was happy. We were in the car, driving home from soccer practice, and the radio was playing something old and soft, and Ethan was looking out the window in that way he has, that way that makes him look older than 14. That makes me remember when he was 2 and David would hold him up to see the airplanes at the airport. Yeah, I said. I think I am. Really? He turned to look at me. Even with all the stuff with Kevin and Tyler and everything? Even with all of it? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm glad. You are? Yeah. He smiled, and he looked so much like David in that moment that my heart ached. You deserve to be happy, Mom. You really do. I pulled the car over because I couldn't see the road through my tears. Mom, what's wrong? Nothing, I said. Nothing's wrong. I'm so proud of you, Ethan. You have no idea. He didn't understand. He was 14. He didn't know what it meant to be a good man, a kind man, a man who could look at his mother and tell her she deserved happiness without jealousy or resentment or anything but love. But he would. Someday. He would understand. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance. Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories. I'm sitting on the porch of the house on Maple Creek Drive. It's early evening, and the sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that David would have loved. Kevin is inside, making dinner. He's gotten better at cooking over the years, or maybe I've just gotten used to his particular style. Ethan is upstairs, doing homework or playing video games or whatever 14-year-olds do when they're not being surprisingly wise. The older woman who first told me about love, she's still here. She's still sitting on her porch in the evenings, watching the world go by. I've talked to her a few more times since that first conversation, and each time I've learned something new. About love. About life. About the long game of being human. She told me once that the secret to happiness was low expectations. Don't expect too much, she said. From anyone. From yourself. From life. Just show up, do your best, and let the rest go. I thought that was depressing when she said it. Now I think she was just honest. We spend so much of our lives expecting things from our spouses, our children, our careers, our lives, and when those expectations aren't met, we're devastated. But if you expect less, if you're grateful for what you have instead of mourning what you don't, maybe that's its own kind of freedom. I'm not saying I've mastered it. I'm still learning. I'll probably be learning until the day I die. But I'm trying. And that's something. Love quiet, forbidden midlife romance. Subscribe to Noah's Awakening for more slow burn stories.